And we're live. Hello, everyone. I'm here with. Oh, God. I could silence that. I'm live with Philip Chase, the Dr. Fantasy. I'm so excited to actually be able to talk to you.
Well, I am also excited to talk with you, Alex, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very interested in your thoughts. I thought you made some really cool observations about the Way of Adan in terms of it being a story about stories. And I loved what you said about the songs of origin being a kind of story as well, which I really love that insight. And I think you're the first person to point that out, actually. So that was very cool.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like I'm thinking songs of origin. They
Yep.
must be like the origins of things.
Exactly. I mean, when I was studying comparative mythology, I'm not sure if I'm saying this person's name correctly, but there was a fellow named Mircea Eliade who had this concept of creation time, of this idea that you are in tune with the true essence of something if you can go back to its origins, its creation, and that by naming it from that moment, you have a sort of understanding and an ability to influence it in a way, if that makes any sense. So it's a in a way, it's the story of the origin of the thing, as you say. So that's kind of what I was going for there in that Song of Origin business. So yeah, there's Mix Garfield all the way from Norway, and Ben is there,
Ben. And then Britain.
and Britain. All right, yay!
But yeah, no, that's so interesting that you bring that up. Because like I saw them like, oh, that's so interesting. I love that concept, that idea. And that I was obsessed with it as soon as it's like we're gonna say this origin of a thing. And I think you're right. It's that like if you know the the way something came to be, you have ways to pull on its strings.
Yes, yeah. This is a concept, of course, it's common enough in other fantasies as well. You have like in Ursula Le Guin's Ursi series, the magic, or at least a big part of the magic, works through knowing the true name of something, right? And this is you see this in all kinds of other fantasies, of course. I love how Le Guin handles it though. And it's interesting because obviously it's a linguistic angle in towards magic, right? That you would know the word for something somehow gives you a kind of understanding of the thing, of its essence. So
Yeah,
I love linguistic types of magic in fantasy myself. I think there's something really cool about that, and it just says a lot about people as well. I think that how we interact with the world, how we understand the world, is largely through language, and language influences how we see things in some really fascinating ways.
I know. It's the also I before I continue, take it, Britain.
Hopefully, we're inspiring you, Britain. Hopefully, we're
Exactly.
inspiring you for your return. We are waiting for.
Uh, but oh my,
Oh,
oh,
and there's Zamar. All
is
right.
there? But oh my God, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, we were talking about songs of origin and language and
Oh
magic and all that.
yes, true names. I've actually wanted to get into Earthsea, or I wanted to get into Earthsea at some point, and then
Yeah.
I heard it was the school trope, and then I went, okay, bye. And then I've heard so many
Well,
good things about
it's not
Earthsea.
really. I mean, the whole school thing is it's part of it, and it was, of course, Le Guin did it long before J.K. Rowling or Patrick Rothfuss or whoever, or and there have been many iterations of that, but it's actually not as prominent in Wizard of Earthsea as you might think. It's there,
Okay.
but there's plenty outside of that school setting. That school setting is a part of the story, but it's not even a majority of it by any means. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Because the thing is, when I see stories with it, it tends to be like we're taking up a good chunk of 80-90% of the story. We're in that school, and it's like, okay.
yeah, no, it's not like that. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and you've had enough of school, I guess, right? Is that
Exactly, that's my point. I'm like, I have enough of school. Thank you very much. I'd rather go somewhere else.
it's old people like me who want to go back to those Actually, I hated high school too, so it just gives me flashbacks. So yeah. Hey, and there's Jake as well.
Hey, Jake. Jake, shame on you.
Oh yeah, you do
Hello,
your
thank
thing
you
on the
so
couch
much,
with the
man.
ice cream, man, and the Nosferatu. Totally, I dig it. Yeah, yeah.
Have a great
Enjoy.
night, man.
Yeah.
Very central to the
Yeah,
story.
it's true. Yeah, Mick Garfield is right. The time that Ged spends in the Wizarding School is important, but it's in terms of the page count, it's a minority of the total story. So
I will definitely get to it. I have a couple of the sci-fi books of hers that I really want to get to first because I have, where is it? No, it's somewhere up there. Lathe of Heaven,
uh-huh.
and I wanted to get to that a while back in January, but I didn't have the time. I don't think School Trope. Want to think right?
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, I mean the rest of the Ursi books are not at all set on Gaunt. There is one actually of the Tales in Ursi that I read recently that is the origin story of Gaunt, but mostly it's not really school type fantasy at all. So yeah, if you're talking about the series as a whole, yeah, it's not really.
Okay, then bumped up my TBR.
Good, yeah, and it is, and Zamar is entirely correct. Le Guin's prose is magnificent. Some of the most economical and yet beautiful prose you'll come across in the genre, in my opinion. It's just really fantastic.
Really. So, like, if we're going from one being worst prose you've ever seen, definitely not there, to Janny Wirtz.
Okay, I put Le Guin up there, and I'm sure Jenny would as well.
Really?
Jenny
Okay.
Wirtz and Le Guin and Steven Erikson, and I love Robin Hobbs as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
they're just masters, you know. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Scott Baker is also magnificent. Even though I'm not, I find his books depressing. His prose is glorious, and yeah, there's a handful, but I would put Le Guin up there with them for sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I read, I think it was a speech by her once. I got it sent to the entire high school English department. What was it? It was on the nature of fantasy, I think.
Yeah, was that the speech she gave when she accepted that award?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a great.
But I found a speech and I was like, I love this so much. I sent it to one of my teachers and she goes, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then she sends it to the entire English department and everybody was talking
Wow.
about it for days.
Yeah, yeah. No, if anyone's little essays or speeches deserve to be circulated these days, I would say Le Guin's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have I think all of her like books that are compilations of essays, I already have it on my TBR like to buy list.
Mm.
The Language of the Night, I've heard great things about. Uh, what's it? Cheek by Jowl,
Uh-huh.
I've heard great things about. I really want to get to that one, but apparently there's no ebook for it, which is really weird.
Oh, yeah, that is odd. But anyway, she is a big inspiration for me for sure. I'd say she and Tolkien are the two authors that are most deeply embedded in my writing DNA, if you will, and they may come out in ways that I'm not even conscious of while writing. So,
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that she was like it was her and Tolkien because I knew the Tolkien bit. I could tell that,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it was fantastic. But and I also know Tolkien was your number one for a while, right?
Yeah, for most of my life, really, until Malazan. Yeah. And I still love Tolkien, of course, but and sometimes I feel like these whole honestly, I'm not the biggest into like rankings and all that sort of thing. I just love what I love. But if you were to force me to rank things, then yeah, Malazan is number one for me. But it is just such a for me. The difference is this that Malazan tells me what fantasy can be in some ways. That Tolkien is beautiful and he defined the genre in many ways for a long time. So he's a great indication of what fantasy was. But if you want to look ahead, if you want to see what fantasy can be, I think Malazan is a great place to look. And the way I put it more succinctly is that Tolkien baptized my imagination, and Erickson and Esselmont set it free. So yeah.
Yeah. Because I've read Gardens of the Moon. I loved Gardens of the Moon, and but then I went, okay, let me get the special editions.
Yeah.
So those are coming. I think they're going to arrive. It's Tuesday or Thursday.
Mine are supposed to come tomorrow. My the first three of the Broken Binding Malazan books. So I'm very excited about that.
Excited. I'm going to be starting it as soon as I finish Wars of Light and Shadow.
Great. Yeah, I hope you'll love it. It's another profoundly moving and deep and vast series. And it's, for me, it's just like no other journey I've ever been on. But at the heart of it is an exploration of compassion. So it's really an important series as well to me in that sense.
So actually, a thing I wanted to bring up, I thought was very fascinating. Two things. First, I've heard the Eccovian speech, and I love that speech.
Yeah, I do too.
And
yeah.
And the other thing was, I actually remember in my freshman year of high school, I had this story idea, and then a couple months later, I get told about the premise for House of Chains, and I go, "That's the very story idea I had."
Oh no! I'm sure you would do something different, though.
Probably, but still, I'm like, oh, well, then I got to read this series.
Yeah, you should. I would recommend it to anyone, but just realize that Erickson and Esselmont, if you ever read Esselmont's books too, which I recommend, but they like to play with the tropes. They like to subvert things. They like to do things a little differently. And so keeping that in mind, don't be disappointed when you don't have a single hero to root for, or even a group of people that you follow. You'll be like, where's my, if you're going to be strict about your fantasy tropes, you're going to miss a few things, or think, what are these guys doing? But yeah, I hope you'll love it.
Thing is, to me, tropes don't even register while I read. When I read, it's like, oh yeah, that guy, he's just doing this thing. That's his role in the story. Mm-hmm. And then I don't really go, oh yeah, he's chosen one. He's supposed to be the hero.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, sometimes it's unconscious when a story defies our expectations. We're just sort of uncomfortable with it. And that can be provocative to help us think about it, right? Yeah. When the story takes a direction that our instincts are expecting, but it goes somewhere else, So I think that's a cool thing that sometimes you can do.
Like Realm of the Elderlings did that for me so many times.
Yeah.
That's my favorite, by the way.
Oh, it's a wonderful favorite. I love Realm of the Elderlings. Yeah.
So good. And the way it made me have to try and twist my thoughts and think and really try to understand all these points of view and really try to expand my scope beyond just my own thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
You have aphantasia?
No, I don't.
So, okay. So when you close your eyes and when you read a book, you have like a movie going on in your head, right?
I do. And the way I write is actually very visual. I often will picture a scene. I'll lie down on my bed and visualize it before I even start typing. So it's very visual in my case. But there are writers who have aphantasia, like Mark Lawrence, for example.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I know Christopher Rocchio has aphantasia, and I was very shocked to know that.
Interesting.
Because, I was watching John's interview with him, and I'm going, he has aphantasia? How? Because to me, all these, he has such vivid descriptions, as vivid as I'm going to notice.
Yeah. It's something I have a hard time wrapping my head around, actually. Yeah. When I hear people talk about, I've heard Mark Lawrence talk about it a few times, and I'm like, well, interesting. I guess there are different ways to go about this, right? So
it's so interesting. I imagine they do something like what Janny Wirtz does, because I think she says she sketches out a scene, the image beforehand, the setting, and then goes, okay, so this is where it's going to be, and then you go here.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if her process is very visual because she's such a talented artist too. But she's that's not fair that actually she's as talented as
It
she is.
isn't.
Yeah,
Her art is just gorgeous. Like Song of the Mysteries might be one of my favorite covers. Period.
yeah. I love John made it's very funny. John says I proudly have infantasia. That's very funny. Uh,
Oh, I actually hold on. Since we were talking about Malzahn a second ago, I should show you this. Look at this bad
oh,
boy.
look at you. Wow. Oh my
My
goodness.
mom got me this, and it's just beautiful.
That's gorgeous. Yeah,
The Darusha Stan.
yeah, it's Arujistan. And that's by Jeff Brown, right?
Yeah, it's the Jeff Brown Darusha Stan.
Yeah. I love that. That's
It's
yeah.
stunning. Like I had no idea about the blue in the city, like the whole gas coming up from the bottom when I read it, and then people start telling me about it, and then I see this image and I go, "That's Darusha Stan."
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty cool image.
Cool.
Yeah.
And there are just so many fascinating. Have you read Aragon? Have you seen the Aragon special editions?
I have read Aragon, and of course, I was not a kid when it came out, but I read it as an adult to be, to read along with my daughters. So, and I have seen images of the special edition, and it looks like it's going to do very well. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. A lot of people have a ton of nostalgia for Aragon, or the Inheritance Cycle, as the series is called. So yeah, I will not be purchasing that one myself, but I'm happy for people who are loving it.
Because I know Jake, he's been gushing about it. He's like, yes, they're doing special editions for Inheritance Cycle. I'm like, oh, good for you. Because the thing is, I kind of want to get them because they're so gorgeous, but I haven't read them, and I don't.
Oh, you haven't read Inheritance, the Inheritance Cycle. Okay, yeah.
I actually had a dragon series that was my starter fantasy, but it wasn't Inheritance Cycle.
Okay, which one was it?
It is The Wings of Fire.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is I started reading this in like 3rd grade. My mom bought me book 9. And I read that and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then I went back to book 1, read the whole thing.
Wow.
And I loved it. And I just kept rereading them for the longest time until eventually I'm like, oh, there's other stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I jumped into Lord of the Rings.
I haven't read that, but it's cool to think about the series that inspired us to get passionate about whatever realm we end up being enamored with, like fantasy. So when I said that, Siri came on when I said that. Isn't that funny?
Fantasy, Siri's a part of fantasy. How about that?
Yeah.
It'll be part of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna make a joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I ruined your joke.
I don't remember it anymore, so it's fine.
So are we going to talk spoilers for The Way of a Dan, or are we going to do...
we can if you want.
Yeah? Or should we keep it spoiler-free for a while? I just want to warn people in case.
We can talk spoilers for The Way of a Dan. I don't mind that. Siri is part of a dystopian series.
Yeah. The whole... Don't get me started on AI and everything, because it's not something I'm really happy to be witnessing in my lifetime. I know that AI is incredibly useful, but it's also, I think, a serious problem if it becomes more and more, which is what it's happening, a replacement for human creativity. We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater right there. I think if we're allowing that to happen, that's a real huge mistake, I think. But plus, in teaching, it's become a huge problem because students regularly, I'm sure no one at your high school would do this, Alex, but students are regularly using ChatGPT for essays and such. So we've had to change the way we do things. So yeah.
Really? Don't do you make them handwrite now?
I do actually.
Oh,
Much more. And this initially the students do make exactly the same face that you just made, but by the second or third essay, they're like, actually, this is much better because we're actually learning. And it also means they can't procrastinate because they're writing them in class. So nobody fails the class if they show up and they write. So that's good.
okay. That's fine. Like I'm thinking like at home writing the essay.
No. Yeah, it's in class. A lot of the essay writing I have them do now is in class because I don't really like reading ChatGPT essays. They kind of suck, really. So
I mean, I can imagine. Yeah. No, I wouldn't be happy about that at all.
yeah. So, but anyway, so we are going to do spoilers. Is that the plan?
Sure, we can do that.
All right.
Right then. 3, 2, 1. All right, we can go spoilers now.
All right.
That's it, people. Oh. So I wanted to ask, what was there a main religion that inspired you for the Adan religion?
Just for the Adan one. I grew up in a Christian household. In fact, my father is a retired pastor, and my grandfather also, and my great grandfather. I had all retired or were pastors at one point. So I definitely grew up in a Protestant household, and that's the religion I know the best. Obviously, having grown up in it and read the Bible many times, and even at one point as a teenager, thinking I probably would follow in my fathers and grandfathers and great grandfathers' footsteps. So I took it pretty seriously. And so that's the one I know the most. That said, the Way of Adan is is a fictional religion. It is not meant to be a representation of Christianity or any other religion. It's simply a religion where there are some very good people who are loving and caring and want to do the right thing. And there are some manipulative people who belong to the institution who are probably a little more cynical, maybe not really believers, but like the power that can come with institutions like that. And then there are even some true believers who interpret their religion as demanding that they spread the word, that they convert other people forcibly, which is all historically true. And you can find that in our history, in the history of religion, in the history of humanity. There are all sorts of those people. And I was interested, I guess, in part of the story, at least, in exploring those different facets of how an institutionalized religion can sometimes inspire goodness in people, can be a source of comfort, can help people get through their lives, but also at the same time can inspire hatred or at least be used as a tool in the service of hatred. So that is something that fascinates me. And there are very few institutions that are as, I guess, emblematic of humanity as religion. Really, the full spectrum of our best qualities and our worst qualities can be found in any one religion, I think. So yeah, it's not really meant to represent any particular faith at all. It's just meant to represent a religion with people within it who are exploiting it, people within it who view it as their purpose to force other people to agree with them, and then there are people in it who are more gentle and kind and compassionate. So yeah, and I think that's true of every religion that's ever been, right?
Yeah. I mean, there were so many of those. Loved the way you had specifically the seniority of the priesthood interact with one another, though I haven't seen much more beyond. Okay. You're going to have to help me out with the names.
Oh yeah, I can help you with that. Yeah.
So the supreme priest, it starts with a B, like I want to say Bagsack.
No, Bagsack is a different priest, but yeah, Bledla.
Yeah. Okay, so Bagsack is one of the priests.
Bagsack is a priest. He's the one in Dayraven's village in Kinsford.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But Bledla and then his relationship with his close friend, whose name I can't remember. Could you please help me out?
Arna.
Arna.
Yeah.
Those two specifically, I loved, absolutely loved their relationship and how they. Hey, John, I am on the bike getting my exercise. Entertain me.
We'll do our best. Get that
Maybe
card.
we need to get like a picture of Pooh just to make sure you're a little bit more entertained.
And Pooh's on the treadmill next to him.
But the way Arna and Bledla interact with one another and how Arna believes in spreading the way of Adan very differently from Bledla.
Yeah.
And he wants to be that peaceful. We want to get everybody under the umbrella of Adan by converting them rather than, hey, let's take you over and start murdering your people and just conquer you.
Yeah, that's right. They both think that their God is telling them to spread this religion. But obviously, we had the same thought. Great minds and all that. So they both believe that Adan has directed them to, that's their interpretation of their faith, that it is important to spread this religion. But there's more than one way to do that, isn't there?
Yeah.
So for Bledla, it doesn't really matter as long as the religion gets spread. And it seems like the most effective way is violence. And if you look at history, there are plenty of examples where a religion spread through violence, right?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe Bledla's not wrong about that. If he really believes that to achieve the kingdom of the eternal and to save humanity, you have to convert everybody to this faith. Well, then I guess if you really believe that, then you could see where it's not an entirely irrational thought, is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, Bledla's interesting to me in that sense that he is a true believer, right? Whereas Arna also believes in the necessity of spreading the word, but doesn't think violence is actually what's called for. Doesn't believe that Adan is asking them to spread their faith through violence, but rather through compassion, through living a good life. And that is probably a much slower way to spread your religion than violence, unfortunately, isn't it?
True. Hey, Joanna.
There's Joanna.
And what was it? I also loved how his name starts with a T.
A T.
I think it starts with a T. He's the guy.
Priest or
he's a priest. Yeah.
Okay.
He's the priest who comes to Arna and says,
"Oh, that's Yoruman." Yeah, that's a J. But
yeah, it starts with a T. T J, just upside down, right? And a little bit of it.
Same thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's Yoruman. And he's another facet of this, really, because he's not really a true believer at all. At least not, he doesn't believe in the way of Adan the way Bledla does, that's for sure, right?
Yeah. And how he's going that route of, oh yeah, there are some things that your religion believes in, and I don't really agree with that. I don't like that.
Right.
So we need to be a little bit more open. And how he's just trying to mess with everybody. Or not mess with everybody. He's going to Arna and trying to take that power.
Yeah, I do see Yoruman as in some ways sympathetic, but in other ways he's incredibly arrogant and self-centered. But he's a figure that fascinates me as well, because I think if he were around today, he'd probably be a scientist, right? And of course, in this kind of society, the religion is everything, right? If there's any science going on at all, it's probably under the auspices of the religion, right? In this case, the way. So yeah, I think he's somebody who's very skeptical, and he has his own agenda, so to speak, and he's after power. And he's told himself, though, it's for a very good reason. And he has a bit of a personal history that I think that, well, at least in my mind in any way, it makes him a little bit more sympathetic, perhaps. But yeah, he's like many of us, he doesn't like mortality. He wants to find a way to overcome mortality. And he believes that it's something you can achieve in a very different way from what Bloodlet's all about. So, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about oh my God, no, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
It was, so Imhar specifically.
Imhar, yes, okay.
Was probably one of my favorite characters through the entire novel.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm insane, but I could see a little bit of Sam in him. Was Samwise Gamgee like a conscious?
Not conscious, but of course, if we're talking about tropes here, the protagonist often has a friend who is loyal and who is accompanying the protagonist on their journey, and somebody that the protagonist really leans on. Now, Imhar's slightly more complex, I suppose. Like Sam in the books is Frodo's servant, right?
Oh yeah.
And the movie does downplay that a little bit, I think. But if you know anything about the British class system, you know that that's a servant master relationship. That is clearly where Sam is his social inferior. In the case of Dayraven and Imhar, it's a little complicated, but Imhar was a thrall. He was a slave of Dayraven's family, of his father. But also Dayraven grows up with him and thinks of him as like an elder brother. So it's a very complicated relationship. And of course, Imhar is very aware that he was born into a different culture, that he has possibly family alive somewhere else. But he's always sort of sacrificed that part of himself in order to be this big brother figure for Dayraven. And there's something beautiful about that. But I also felt like Imhar deserved his own story. He deserved to, in the end, he makes that decision, right? And that near the end of the Way of Adan to not abandon Dayraven, because he knows that Dayraven is with someone who's going to be able to help him with Sequara.
Yeah.
But to go his own way. And I'm happy for Imhar that he has that, that he has the chance to find himself and to face his past and to be reunited with family in the form of his uncle, Anarad, at least, right? And so there is that early promise made by Dayraven as well. Hey, let's find your sister, So that might play a bit of a role in the story as well. So we'll see.
That was honestly probably one of my favorite scenes, the moment where Imhar's like, I love you, Dayraven, but I want to go my own way right now. I want to find my family, my blood family.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Thank you, John. Yeah.
You really do. Honestly, I loved all of the names. They felt so unique. And like they have a feel to them. I tend to have to me, when I see names in a story or fantasy in general, there's I will feel them out, because like Athera and the things in Janny Wurtz's work, they have that special vibe, I guess, that feeling to them. Yours, the exact same thing. Like they have a very special tone to them, I guess.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I actually stole them from various places. So I didn't make up these names. They're mostly, well, I made up a few, but mostly I'm taking them from various languages. We talked about languages early on, right? And I love language. And I think that for me, it's important in order for my cultures to feel like they're real, to feel believable, to be immersive enough. There has to be linguistic consistency because, as you know, Alex, there are certain sounds that we make in every language, and there's certain sounds we don't make, but that other people do make, right?
Yeah.
There's certain ways of making words that are more common in certain languages than in others. And I wanted that linguistic consistency. So I based the language of the Mark and Torland and Elland on Old English. Their place names and their names, their personal names, are all based on Old English. Whereas Grimric, which you haven't really seen much, but you've met Orvandil at least, the Theoths, they're all based on Old Norse. And the kingdoms of Adenon and Caergillion are based on Welsh primarily, but also Irish. So there's a Celtic feel to that, all of that. Whereas Asdrúlad in the kingdoms of the East, there's a South Asian element to all those names that they're very much grounded in Nepali. So that's the language that I speak. And, it's related to Sanskrit and Hindi and all of that. So I wanted to ground each of these cultures and their languages in a way that would make them feel authentic, hopefully, to a reader. And a lot of them are names I still like. Dayraven, for example, is a name in Beowulf, the name of a warrior that Beowulf kills. It's just a one-off little, throwaway character, that a Frankish warrior that Beowulf kills by hugging him to death. It gives him a bear hug. And I always thought, what a waste of a good name. That name deserves a story. So that's where I started with after making a map. I just knew my main character was going to be named Dayraven. So because I wanted to make better use of that name.
Actually, I remember you mentioned that once, and I almost decided, okay, I'm going to read Beowulf, then I'm going to read the Adan trilogy.
Yeah, I did. There's more than just me stealing the names. There are a lot of themes that are common to Beowulf and my story, and others who've been inspired by Beowulf as well. There's a pervasive sense of the fleetingness of life. For example, the Ubi Sunt theme is huge in Beowulf. In other words, where are those who came before us? What about the people of the past and their struggles? And when we look at them and their stories, in what ways are we actually looking in a mirror and seeing ourselves? And one day we'll all be gone as well, won't we? And people in the future might feel similarly about us. That's a huge theme in Beowulf, and in my own writing. The idea that our lives are fleeting, but again, going with that South Asian influence, in addition to our lives being fleeting, we're very much connected with other people, and we can find ourselves in other people, both of different times and different places. And there is something beautiful and I think transcendent about that discovery of connection with other people that for me is at the heart of what I'm doing in this trilogy. Actually, is that journey of discovery, of finding connection and transcendence and hopefully compassion.
I mean, you did a great job throughout the book of doing that, in my opinion. And when now that I'm thinking about it, another one of my favorite aspects was the dwarves. Is that the thing?
Yeah, the dwergs, yes, yeah, Gnorn and Hawk, yes, and the other dwergs of the Firnhaus, yes, yeah. So they're also a great example of a people who are on their way out. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's the Old English version of his name, at least. Yeah.
Like Scarfield has given me so much.
Oh, he is a wealth. He is a wealth of lore and information for sure. Yeah.
Like he told me about Imhar being Irish.
Yep, that's an Irish. Again, name of a Viking though. Originally Ivar. We would say Ivar. But in fact, I don't speak Irish, but I know that the H in Irish words changes the letters before it. Sometimes it negates them entirely, and sometimes maybe it's a complicated language, I think. But so it's possible that what we read as Imhar actually sounds more like Ivar. I'm not sure in Irish, but I say Imhar anyway. So
okay. Yeah. I'm gonna keep calling him Imhar because I can't. I can't read.
I do know Welsh. I do know Welsh, but I don't know Irish, and they're actually fairly different. So yeah.
You know Welsh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I studied Welsh when I was a little older than you. Actually, I went over to
Really?
Wales and took an immersion course in Welsh. I had been studying it on my own for a year or so before that, though. Yeah, so
The only thing I know about Welsh that drives me up the wall is the two D's, and the D's make a th
with the th
sound.
sound. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But the dwarves, or you said it in a different way.
Dwergs. Yeah.
Where and how? Oh, hey, Jenny Wirtz.
Look at that. Speak of the devil.
These are designed.
Yeah.
My theory after him. It's a bagpiping.
And there, by the way, there is a YouTube video you can watch of Jenny Wirtz playing the bagpipe. I highly recommend.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
gonna find this.
we were just talking about how unfair it is, how talented you are, Jenny, and
It is.
and now we have to add music to art and writing as well. So yeah,
She's just a master of all art.
whatever she wants to do, I'm convinced she's going to do well. So yeah.
But
The
the
dwergs. You're
dwarf,
wondering about the dwergs. Yeah, so that's
yeah,
dwerg is just the old English version of dwarf or dwarves, which is it's based on Old Norse. And so yeah, and their names are very Old Norse. I stole them mostly from Old Norse, although Gnorn is actually Old English and it means sorrow. The name Gnorn. Yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but really, it means sorrow.
yeah. Gnorn means sorrow. Yeah.
I, I that's worrisome. I won't lie.
No, you've already heard a lot of their story in The Way of Adan. You know, their
Okay.
past and the fact that they are exiles, which is another theme, how your identity comes from your people. And yeah, the dwergs of the Fernhouse have a tragic history where they were displaced by another people, by the Theos, of which Orvandil is one. And ultimately, yeah, that caused the downfall of their people because they had a kind of yeah, a few of them survived and straggled out of there, but they don't live particularly well in Torland, where they're simply exploited for their skills. You know, they're not treated humanely. They're in fact very much a persecuted group. So it's not like they feel entirely at home where they are.
That's actually something I wanted to follow up on. So
Hmm.
for the dwarves, they, I didn't quite understand because it felt like they said that they were dying out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, they are because there's only a few hundred of them left. In other words, maybe 300 or so.
Oh,
Yeah, and for people like Gnorn and Hlok, there's no one there that's because they're related to most of the other dwergs. There was no one.
oh,
Yeah, they couldn't get married. There were no eligible females for them to marry. So
got
yeah,
it.
that's the situation that they're in.
Yeah, I was under the impression that the community they had there wasn't just family. It was like, yeah, we've got these other people too.
They're mostly
And like,
related to each other at this point. Yeah, yeah.
oh,
Too
okay.
small of a population. Yeah. I don't remember a lot about. So I only read from the Covenant series, Lord Falsbane, and I read it when I was a teenager. So I can't say that it was no conscious influence whatsoever. Who knows what's kicking around in this skull though? But I don't even remember if giants come up in Lord Falsbane. To be honest, it's been that long. It's been a long time. 30, close to, well, let's say more than 30 years. So somewhere between 30 and 40 years ago, I read Lord Falsbane. So I don't think so would be the answer to that. But yeah, I need to reread Lord Falsbane and then read the rest of the series for sure, because I have a lot of respect for Donaldson's essays that he's written on fantasy. So
Yeah, I've never heard of Donaldson.
Oh, Stephen Donaldson? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, he Lord Fowl's Bane, 1977, I believe, was the publication year. But Thomas Covenant series is one of the giants. I was just going there, Jenny. So, oh, she beat me. But yes, indeed, he is indeed one of the giants of the genre for sure. Had a chance to chat with him once, actually, at ICFA. Yeah. Yep. And I did a video on a couple of his essays he wrote on epic fantasy, and I think he defines epic fantasy just brilliantly. I love his idea that epic fantasy is the literature of reintegration, that it is the literature that allows us to feel upon going on that journey with the characters and accomplishing whatever it is they're accomplishing, going on that quest, feeling a sense of meaning and empowerment that we partake in that along with the characters. So those are brilliant essays. I recommend everybody read those, as well as the Thomas Covenant series. Yeah,
I'm absolutely gonna go. Once this is over, number one, I'm gonna add Thomas Covenant to my TBR.
Yep.
And I might read one or two of those essays.
The essays are very short. They're very short. Yeah.
But I'll definitely read one or two of them.
Yep.
After I'm done with my daily reading quota for Perril's Gate.
Good. Yeah.
But
so yeah, I don't know if I answered your question about the dwergs, but they are a tragic people in many respects. But that does not prevent Gnorn particularly from being compassionate. And I love that Dayraven and Gnorn are able to have a close friendship on the basis of them both being exiles of a sort, right? That they have that, despite the different histories of their peoples, they may seem like unlikely friends, but they see themselves in each other. Once again, that's the thing. There's the possibility for empathy and compassion there.
I didn't even think about that, because they're both exiles.
Yeah, they're both exiles. And that's one thing about Dayraven's journey, that some people got annoyed with me because I had Dayraven change course. Like, you're supposed to go train with that wizard, Galdor. What happened? But for him, it's a matter not only of honor, but he meets these two dwergs and he becomes friends with them. And it is very deep in his nature to be compassionate. That is a big thing to know about Dayraven. I hope it's obvious enough that he's a compassionate person. And so it's not something he can easily do once he's made friends with these two, to just turn away and say, all right, well, good luck, guys. He makes that vow to their cousin Ilm while they're in Ettenstone. And he takes that very seriously. People in these kinds of societies took vows very seriously. And so when he makes that vow to Ilm, it's not something he's going to break, right? He's not going to pretend at that point. And he feels her pain in that moment. She's losing her cousins, her beloved cousins, because of their misplaced ideas about honor. From her perspective, what they're doing is foolish and unnecessary. But they feel such a sense of despair in not only their personal limitations, but in the fact that their people are dying all around them. And so, yeah, they, yes, well said, John. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Dayraven feels all of that deeply, and he feels Ilm's sorrow and her sadness, and he wants to help. So yeah.
It's so interesting to me, because I loved Dayraven. The fact that Dayraven had chosen to stay with Gnorn and the dwergs, because he was that compassionate. I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and number one, of course, in character, but also it just resonated with me, and I loved that idea of, we're not going to leave you behind. You are our friends. You have helped us. You have been kind towards us, and it's that sense of loyalty.
Yeah, that's very important. So yeah, for sure. And then yes, the Dueros. Yeah, also based on the Old English word. Yep.
You
Mick
make me
Scarfield
very happy mentioning
coming
Dark
through with
Crystal.
the lore again. Yeah.
So wait, the Dwergs?
Yeah, Dwero is another form of dwerg from Old English. Yeah. Tolkien uses Dwero in Lord of the Rings too, in Middle Earth, Dwero Delve and all that. But yeah.
I guess I might need to do a Lord of the Rings reread at some point soon.
Oh, yeah, you can never do enough Lord of the Rings rereads.
I know. It's so good.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, that is, I mean, for them, it's worse than death in a way because your whole identity is wrapped around your people. They tell you who you are. You see yourself reflected in them every day without even thinking about it. And to lose that is to lose oneself, which would be incredibly painful. But that is part of Dayraven's journey, isn't it? Is the losing of oneself in order to transcend the self. And what you're seeing in book 1 is the departure. Book 2 is the transcendence, and book 3 is the return. So what you're seeing is that mostly painful part. So,
like I am, because book 1 in the way he had to leave those people, the way he had to go. Okay, like I mean, yeah, as you said, it was so painful watching them all turn on him because they are so fundamental to how he operates, how he works.
Yeah.
And then seeing the fallout, seeing his internal strife and his struggle was so fascinating. And what even hurt a little bit more was that his father had come and decided, I can't see you. I'm so ashamed of myself that he couldn't meet his eyes, that he couldn't go see his son out.
Yeah. So this is the opposite side of compassion, of seeing oneself in the other, is seeing the other as the monster, as the monstrous, right? So Dayraven has been touched by something monstrous. He has been turned into something monstrous in their eyes, and he has become other, outsider, right? Exile.
Yeah.
So that is, the perspective of these villagers, and they're not entirely wrong because there is something very dangerous inside Dayraven, and he doesn't have any control over it. So, Urd is not. She's pretty wise, in her decision to send him away to someone who can teach him, hopefully, how to deal with this. But yeah, there's a sense in which it is very sorrowful and tragic, but necessary, I guess. We got to kick the hero out of that womb-like, space somehow or other.
We got to give him a boot to the back and say, all right, let's go on your journey.
Yeah. But thank you. You saw you highlighted John's question or statement there. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a booktube. I'm a probably not great booktuber. I muddle around here and do my best, but I hope that the books speak to people, and the Broken Binding thing is just still surreal for me. So thank you. Yeah,
he's an amazing booktuber. Don't listen.
I have fun talking about stories, and if people like to listen to that, then great. I'll keep talking.
Keep talking, because we're having a great time listening.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's lots of. In fact, I think most people who've read the trilogy would say that the series gets darker. The first book is The Departure. The second book is where the war happens. It's you've gotten up to the point where the war just started, the War of the Way. So book 2 is the War of the Way. There's plenty of action and violence in book 2, and then book 3 is a totally different kind of pain. It's something different. Book 3 is where I took some risks, I think, and did something that you don't often see done in fantasy. So I'll be curious to see what you think.
Yeah, from the small bits that I have heard about book 3, I feel like I'm going to absolutely love it.
I hope so. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. For me, it's. I've talked about this before, but I had not read Malazan when I wrote books 1 and 2, but I had read Malazan when I wrote book 3. That's one difference. And the other differences I attribute to me being in my 30s when I wrote books 1 and 2, and being in my 40s when I wrote books 3. And just, you're a different person, as you age in some ways. And I also felt like, because of Malazan, I got permission from Steven Erikson to do some different things. Like, I don't know, introducing a brand new important character in the 3rd book of a trilogy. That's Erikson introduces brand new important characters in almost every book in the Malazan Book of the Fall.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Oh yeah, welcome, hello.
And you end up loving them every time. So yeah. So I just sort of, again, in some ways he really helped me to free my imagination. And I think some of my craziest moves, and hopefully some of them worked, are in book 3. But yeah, we'll see what you make of them.
So John has a question.
Yeah, okay. How much do I attribute the series success to the fact that I published them all at once? Honestly, I don't know. I think if I were to do it all over again, the one thing I might change is to actually spread them out a little more. So instead of publishing one every 3 months, I would probably do one every 6 months. But, other than that, I can't really tell. I didn't see a huge spike in sales when I released book 2 and then book 3. And it was, it was interesting in terms of a strategy. I'm not sure I can call it entirely successful, but I'm happy to have readers. I'm happy to have people reading these books and going on the journey, and especially when people get to the end of it. I think a lot of people would agree, who've read the entire trilogy, that reading the 3rd book really recontextualizes the first 2 in many ways. That certain things you see in an entirely new light once you get to the end. And hopefully, anyway, that's something I wanted to happen. Hopefully it happens for some readers anyway. But yeah, the 3rd book really does, I think, for some people at least, change some of what you think is happening in the first 2. So yeah.
I feel like that's always some of the best stories, the ones where you reach the end and everything before it is going, oh, well, that's a little different now. We see this in such a different light.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, John. You're absolutely, and that was my thinking too. Honestly, I thought putting them all out within a short space would help, because then people would say, well, okay, all 3 are out, so I guess I'll give it a shot, And my thinking was, every 3 months, that gives people a chance to read book 1, and then, in 3 months, read book 2. I thought that would be good timing, but who knows? And some people did actually read each book on release. So yeah. And I got some of my best readers that way, so I'm real happy about that. But yeah, Jenny Wirtz is correct. A really, really, really successful series is where half the sales for book 2 are, for book 2, you get half the number of sales that you had for book 1. That's successful. If you can get half, of the sales for book 2 that you had for book 1, that's success right there. So yeah, it's a tough market. Yeah,
that's fair. When I start a series, I tend to stick to it, unless it's like something I don't like.
I hope so. Yeah, I feel very fortunate to have the readers that I have. It's allowed me to interact with some really lovely people. So thanks, John. Yeah, I waited for nearly 2 decades before I finally published. I started in 2004 and ended up publishing in 2023. So yeah, 19 years, or almost 19 years, 18 and a half years. So speaking of all the lovely people, there's P.L. Stewart.
Yeah, I need to get to his books.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've only read the first, A Drowned Kingdom, and it is brilliant. It's really great stuff. Jenny Wirtz also loves his series, by the way. But yeah, it's really exceptionally. It's very rare for me to read modern fantasy that has a strong, immersive voice to it that tells me I'm in a different time and place. In other words, a lot of fantasy writers these days write with a very modern voice, And I
Yeah.
personally find that jarring, but PL has done a great job of giving his story an ancient voice that immediately makes me feel, yes, I'm in this other world and I love it. You know, it's an epic, it's a truly epic form of storytelling. Yeah.
It's when I get to it, I'm gonna be obsessed. I know I will be, because oh wait, hold on, I saw something about Kios. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I need to get to, I want to get to at least book 2 and hopefully books 2 and 3 at least this year. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm hoping I can start it this year, but
Very much worthwhile.
the 2 decades. That's what's so. Or you were working on it for 2 or 3 decades.
2. Yeah, I started in 2004 and I published in 2023. So, not quite 2 whole decades. But yeah, and I actually wrote the sequel that I'm publishing in June, While Darkness Gathers. I wrote that as well during those years, at least the
Oh,
draft.
really?
Yep. At least a draft of it, which I've been tinkering with for the last few months, and now it's off to my developmental editor for feedback. So yeah.
I love that cover, by the way. That might be my favorite of the covers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy with what Jack did there. Jack does great work. That's another part of this whole thing that I love, is that it's enabled me to work with some really great people. I love that the story I created has supported other artists. That somebody like Jack has had the opportunity to not just do my maps and cover design and stuff, but now he's making a go of it. He actually is making a living out of designing maps for fantasy writers and stuff.
That's amazing.
How cool is that, right?
It's so cool.
Yeah, I love that. And it's I've worked with some great artists for the special edition, obviously, and I got to interact with Patrick a lot in planning the art, and the song that I had commissioned by Nikhil Koparkar. I just love that this thing is out there in the world now, and that there's a theme song for the Adan trilogy. And I feel that Nikhil nailed it. Like, he evoked the feeling of the entire trilogy in this 3.5 minute piece that is just so beautifully done. Plus, I'm really happy that my daughter played the cello on it too. So yeah.
That must have been so amazing to have not only this amazing song written for your 3 books or 4 books, and then have your child help play it.
Yeah, it's really something. I'm really happy with how that all turned out. The blessed be the eternal. Yes, everybody should have a theme song.
Yes.
Yeah, and I bet you Nikhil would be willing to write more theme songs for authors. So yeah, but he's just so talented. I can't believe that we have somebody in our community who wrote music for The Wheel of Time and His Dark Materials and other things. I mean, even if you hate those TV series, listen to the music. It's really beautiful. It's amazing. And I think that it's just amazing that we have this person among us. Yeah.
It is so cool. It really is.
So Ben had a question there. Yeah. Okay. What was it like to write the character of Sequara? Was a female POV harder to inhabit than Day Ravens? So I'm very fortunate in that I live with females, and I never felt, at least while I was writing, that it was harder to write a female perspective. Maybe I should have. Maybe but I always had women around to ask questions, and I did. I often would ask. I can't remember specific questions, but I would ask, how would you feel in a situation like this? I could ask my wife or my daughters. And I do think that in some of the younger characters, and again, this is really book 3 territory, but there's a younger female POV character. I can see some of my daughters in that character. So like all of the characters, you do tend to base the people in your stories on the people that you actually know. Now, no one in my books is based entirely on one person. They're just
Yeah.
aspects of people, including myself, in some of the characters, and that's, you just try to make it as compelling as you can, and hopefully Sequara, I did worry at times, am I going to be able to write a good female POV character, or am I going to really be bad at this? Am I going to be tone deaf to certain things that would women reading my book just automatically know, oh, that's a man writing that female character, So I tried to write her and Ord as naturally as I could. But anytime, any character, you're right, unless you're writing an autobiography of yourself, you're inhabiting another person's mind, and you hope that it comes out well. So yeah, John, you have an advantage there.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have an unfair advantage in that sense, because for Discovery, you actually have a female mind working on the story. So yeah.
Hey, go write that part, please.
Yeah.
And actually, I want to come to this real quickly.
Yeah.
Since it's sold out too, which is awesome.
It was a surprise to me, because I found out when people messaged me on Twitter or something, I think, and you put out a post, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I went and I just randomly decided to go look at the infirmary section, because I'm so paranoid now that I missed out on the whole the Tidechild trilogy being sold. And and so I went there and I'm like, okay, let me go check out the Dragon's Hoard. And I see The Way of Adan sold out. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Let me go talk about it. Say, he's sold out. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm obviously very happy about that, and we will be getting to work pretty soon on the Prophet of Adan for the Broken Binding edition. So yeah, the fact that it sold out is just, it's wonderful, because it feels really good that the support from people who already knew me, and many of them even had copies of the book already. But there are people like John there, he already had the paperback. I think he's giving it to Jacob though, so that's making good use of it. Yeah, it's a really great feeling to have that kind of support around here. But the cool thing is the Broken Binding introduced this story to people who never had heard of me before, right? There are fans of the Broken Binding who just saw the amazing art and everything and said, wow, that looks cool. I'm going to try that, So it's really, it's surreal, actually. It's really surreal to have the audience at all, and I'm feeling very fulfilled about that. So, oh, you're sending it to your sister. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, she deserves a copy too.
Yeah. I mean, it is a stunning book. There's a reason why I have it over here, because this cover, I don't know if I told you, I opened it up with my mom, and
yeah.
She was like, every time you pull a new book from the Broken Binding, better and better, and here you are. And then I've been trying to indoctrinate her into reading or listening to The Way of Adan.
Alan's narration. Yeah, I'm so glad you listened to that too. You did listen for portions of the story, didn't you, to Alan's narration? Yeah. Another artist, person, talented individual that I'm so happy I got to work with. Alan is hard at work on The Prophet of Adan right now, and I'm pretty sure we can say April is going to be. It'll be out in April.
Okay, so since you're saying pretty sure it's going to be out in April, I can also say pretty sure I'm going to be reading Prophet of Adan in April.
Yep. Yeah, pretty confident. Alan was pretty confident anyway the last time I talked to him. There's a slim chance we could even make March, but I think let's just say April. He's just so talented, the way he does the voices and everything else. And he's made a audiobook listener out of me, because I actually had tried to listen to audiobooks previously and failed miserably. And the first time I ever got through one was listening to Alan narrate The Way of Edan, which sounds crazy because I know the story, right? But I enjoyed his performance so much. And now I'm listening to Andy Serkis doing Fellowship of the Ring. So there you go.
Oh, yeah, I love those. The Andy Serkis ones. I've made my mom sit through them, and she loves them, or specifically The Hobbit.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting with Fellowship, but yeah, I've read The Hobbit so many times I've almost got it memorized.
I can't blame you, honestly. Like for me, my favorite Lord of the Rings is either Return of the King or The Hobbit.
Yeah, well, I love it all.
It's all so good.
The reason I've read The Hobbit more times though is because I read it to my girls.
That's fair.
Yeah,
it's just so much. It's such a fun, delightful, cozy read.
Yeah, it really is. It's pure nostalgia as well for me. So
yeah, it is just a delight. But I think that's about all I have, and I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me over, Alex. This was fun. I had a great time, and thank you to everybody over there in the chat for being here and with your questions and your support and your comments. It really means the world to me. But Alex, thank you so much for giving The Way of Edan a shot, for being so supportive, and for inviting me here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been amazing. I loved the book, so it was absolutely worth it. But again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for spending so much of your time, and it's been a blast. So I'm gonna end the stream.
Alrighty. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye.